Hey everyone, Alex from Stratified. Welcome back to our channel. So behind me is our brand new to us 2022 BRZ, which is our newest development car. And of course, we have to get our hands dirty right off the bat with the car. We're still waiting for a tuning solution, which we're super eager to test out on the new 2.4. But we also have our 2015 FRS, our Gen 1. Now, as you know, there's a lot of differences but there's also a lot of similarities between these two cars. So I thought, what better way to introduce this car than to compare it to our Gen 1. So we'll look underneath the car, we'll look in the engine bay, and let's get started. So here's the front suspension, brake, and strut and hub assembly of the 2015 FRS. So the brakes, they are the same between the old car and the new car. We've already had confirmation that any sort of aftermarket suspension here will bolt onto the new car. Obviously all the connection points are going to be the same, and this one has the adjustable camber bolts, something that you're probably going to be able to do on the old car, or rather on the new car as well. We also have these brake ducts, which have been really useful for track days straight from a GT3, and it looks like those are going to fit on the control arms of the new car as well. And of course, the knuckles on the old car are steel, and it's been much publicized that the knuckles on the new car are aluminum. So let's go have a look at that part. Now here's the same assembly on the 2022. So the brake calipers are the same, the rotors are the same, the bolt pattern is still a 5x100, so your wheels from the early gen will bolt up to this car. Like I said, the suspension mounting points and how it attaches to the knuckle as well as at the top is the same. And you can see that the BRZ does come with the aluminum knuckles here, which the apparently a GR86 does not. Now, a couple of other interesting points on this car is some of the aerodynamics that are not there. So you can see here that you have these ducts that go from the front, so they are functional. They direct air from the front of the car through and around the wheel. And also these to relieve pressure in behind the fender, and they are functional and come out on this side. So that's really neat to see as differences on the new car. Moving on to the wheels on the car. So these are the wheels, the base model wheels from the 2022, and these are the wheels that came on the Scion. Now the Scion wheels were 17x7. The BRZ actually comes with 17x7.5-inch rims. They're both using the same standard tire, the Michelin Primacy, and they're both 2015 or 215 with tires. However, the BRZ wheel, which is half an inch wider, is also 3 pounds heavier. So the tire and wheel combo are 3 pounds heavier than the original FRS wheel. So before we jump underneath the 2022 BRZ, just wanted to walk underneath this 2015 FRS and point out some of the areas here to look that are different on the new car. So let's familiarize ourselves with the old one. So the subframe, it mounts very similarly, but you'll see there are some differences in terms of bracing on the new car. The suspension does bolt up from between the two generations, and the cat back, but not the axle back, the cat back will bolt on from this older car to the new car. Another area to pay attention to is kind of like all the aerodynamics. This car looks a lot more barren underneath compared to the new one, so have a look at that when we get underneath it. This is going to look familiar on the new car. So I'm not sure if it's completely identical, but it looks very similar. The transmission externally looks identical, and as does the differential in the back and the way it's mounted. So have a look at that when we get underneath the new car. And then we come up to this area, the front subframe. So you will see some differences in the front subframe between the the old and the new, and keep an eye for those. And the motor. So one thing I spotted is that you can see that there's a block off plate there, right up there on the FA20 on the heads. You're gonna see that the new car is different there as well. So keep an eye out for that. And then we come up to the motor. We have not test fitted aftermarket headers from the FA20 to FA24. So, some people say yay, some people say nay in terms of fitment. We will find out shortly enough if they're compatible or not. And otherwise, yeah, you're gonna see a lot of OEM header there on the new car. So that's a quick refresher of the 2015. This is even before the pre-facelift on the Gen 1. Now let's get underneath the new car and see what that looks like. So we're now underneath the 2022 BRZ. So there's definitely some differences here. I'll point some out, and maybe there's other things that you guys can spot. So I'm gonna go slowly through this area. So there's the control arms. They look very much the same as the old car. And then the brake assembly, again, it looks very, very similar with that with the hub that contains a parking brake inside and just a caliper on the outside. So let's have a look on this side of the brakes. The brakes are actually vented. You can see that the rotor is vented on the 2022. So there's the axle back exhaust. So the piping looks like it is actually it's a nicer bend than the old car had, and the catback will bolt on to the new car from an old car, but the axle back will not. So that's a different mounting point there. Now the sway bar mounts, as you can see on the BRZ, they are mounted to the dropouts from the subframe. And notice this bar here. So this is a bar that doesn't exist at least on the 2015. The sway bars themselves, we measured them with calipers. They are very, very similar in size to the 2015 FRS, both front and back. There is the pumpkin in the back, again, a Torsen. So these look very, very familiar. The multi-link suspension in the rear. There's a lot of flat body panels underneath the new car, which is nice. This looks very, very familiar. This piece here with the resonator and the second catalytic converter. There's the transmission and the drive shaft, the shifter assembly in there. That all looks very familiar. The transmission is apparently revised, but from the exterior, it looks very, very similar. You can see the FA24 engine in there. It's got a stamping for the 24. Another interesting thing is that you can see up there, that's a vacuum pump that actually our 2015 doesn't have. It's got a block off plate. So the 2.4 has the vacuum pump. And up here, and you can see these pieces. So these, again, reinforcements that don't exist on the old car. So the steering rack looks to mount with a very similar kind of two bolt pattern there, but these additional braces are new for the 2022. And here's the backside of the aluminum knuckles that the BRZ is known for, and again, the control arms. Underneath the motor, we have the headers, which look they look similar to the OEM headers on the 2015 on the earlier cars. You've got a catalytic converter in here. You've got your O2 sensor there, and then another one up here. So from underneath here, the subframe looks similar except for these points where these triangulated braces are bolted on, and we did try to put it on the old car to see if anything fits, and no, it doesn't. So these are not just braces that you can swap right over onto the old car, unfortunately. But it looks like otherwise, kind of the fitment of the motor in here is very, very similar to the FA20. You can even see the little bladder under there, which is a resonator from the intake box. But we'll get a better look at that when we look at the top of the car and we look at the engine from the top. And of course, here is the grille. It's nice and open. You can see the slanted radiator. It's got the AC condenser in front, but Behind it is the radiator, and you can see that they've done some nice work to make sure that the air goes inside the radiator and it doesn't move around it. So there it is. Now let's have a look at the top. Here we're looking at the 2.0, the FA20 in the 2015. So I'm just going to slowly go over some of these as just a reminder of what we see in the engine bay of the old car. So these are very familiar triangulated braces. Of course, this car has the aftermarket coilovers in there. There's your clutch reservoir and there's your brake reservoir. I've got a master cylinder brace installed here, and I've got an aftermarket oil cooler that's an oil to air installed for this car for tracking. I am missing the sound symposer, the sound generator that's used to pipe in noise. And take a look at this air box and this intake. The mass airflow sensor you'll see is different, but these resonators are very much the same. The fuse box location, we'll go over that. There's the battery. And one thing that I wanted to point out is how low the intake manifold sits in this engine. So it sits quite low. Have a look at its position with respect to kind of the firewall there and those braces. And then finally have a look here at the position of the top of the head versus the cross member, not rather cross member, the frame rail right there. So now let's go have a look at the new car and see what differences we can spot. Sitting in front of the 2022, the first thing I'll point out is how the manifold, the top of the manifold, is actually quite a bit higher than on the 2.0. So again, those cross engine cross braces are there, and look at the position of the manifold. Also look at the airbox. So the airbox looks very similar, but the mass airflow sensor is different. And also there's this kind of strange mesh inside the airbox. I didn't see in the old car, so you can kind of see it right there. So it's got a regular filter, paper filter, and then it's got this mesh. I'm not sure if it's for additional debris or anything like that, but that's different in terms of the intake. Just a quick cursory look. The FA20 doesn't have this coolant to oil cooler, but they have added that to the 2.4. The oil that it's rated for on the cap here is also 0W20, just like the FA20. And otherwise, the engine bay looks really similar. I showed you the position of the head with respect to the frame rail, so here it is as well. It doesn't look like the engine is actually sitting higher in the vehicle. They did say that this car has actually a lower center of gravity than the previous generation, but it's just interesting to see how the manifold seems to sit quite a bit taller than in the previous generation. Otherwise, the ECU is in the same location, the battery's in the same location, accessories, alternator, all look very similar. Even the dipstick is there. Obviously, there's no sound symposer, sound generator. It's done by the speakers in this new generation car. But if you're familiar with the old car, then this one is going to look very familiar under the hood as well. So in terms of the interior, one of the large changes between the generation of cars. So of course they've changed as well mid generation 2017, but here's a 2015 and a quick reminder of what it looks like. I really love these seats in this car. I feel they hug me a little bit better than the seats in the new car. But really, from inside the car, of course, no buttons on the steering wheel, a analog dash, and kind of like something that you guys are really familiar with. Just a reminder of how it looks like. And I can tell you from sitting inside the car, the spacing and even the rear seats, that it feels very similar between the new car and the old car. So let's pop into the new car now that I had a reminder and see how that looks. And here's the refreshed cabin. This is a base BRZ, so it doesn't have the Alcantara seat inserts like the more premium models do. And overall, the interior has definitely been updated, and Let's sit inside and have a closer look. So I think you guys saw all this with the from the magazines and so on. So you've got a completely digital cluster here. It looks good. I really like the fact that it actually shows you oil temperature as well. So if we close it here, you can see you've got battery, and then oil temperature, which is nice. Shows you where the car is warmed up. If you track it, then obviously you're gonna get that information. You've got coolant temperature and fuel level. Very no nonsense. If you hit the track button here and you hold it down, then it will at one point, I guess maybe the car has to be started, change into this track mode. So let's start the car, and then you can see, so that's the kind of the track mode gauge cluster there, and you can toggle that back and forth by turning it into the non-track or non-stability control off mode. Shut it off so we get rid of all that additional noise. And of course, this is much improved. I really like how they've kept things very, very similar, or very, very rather simple, with the toggle switches and just these rotary knobs. It's nice and simple. The interface here, it's simple. Driving this car, I don't spend a whole lot of time on the infotainment side of things. But it's been improved. It's been updated. You can see the vents and the top of the dash look a little bit different. This is a very kind of flat area, but it's not a glossy area, so it's not gonna give you a whole lot of glare. And obviously the steering wheel has buttons, and they did this on the refresh of the Gen 1 as well. So that's how the interior looks like. It's still a very good place to be. And the only thing that honestly I wish they had is, I wished, at least for my body, that they had these seats a little bit tighter bolstering, but that's just a personal preference. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this brief walk around and comparison between the 2022 and the 2015 Gen 2 and Gen 1 of this chassis. As you've seen, there's a lot of similarities. There's also some differences. I'm really happy to see that Toyota and Subaru stuck with building a second generation of this car. I think it's a fantastic car. You guys really enjoy it. We're going to work on improving the dynamics of this car, the tuning of this car. So keep following us, stratified.com. Follow this channel. Check out our website. We do have tuning support via Ecutech for the Gen 1. I'm really looking forward to adding the support for the Gen 2 and really moving forward with this. So we're excited. Keep following, and we'll see you guys next time.